directors of MBA with the school, members of the faculty, staff of the school, and my dear students. It's a privilege and honor for me to deliver the A. Haksar Memorial Lecture today on the occasion of the 22nd Foundation Day celebrations of the EMPI Business School. Commemorating Mr. Haksar to celebrate his excellence is both relevant and appropriate in today's context of the Indian economy and the Indian business scenario. Truth be told, it is even more crucial to understanding the evolution of the long journey the Indian economy and business have traversed in the past, as also the likely contours of that journey that will take shape in the next few decades. I will cite 4 specific points to support my contention. 1. Mr. Haksar symbolized the many rare values of management to achieve transformation in the way ITC, which he led for 14 years as the chairman, grew and expanded its business. Not only was he the first Indian chairman of ITC, which is widely known, but he left his mark on the company by launching a diversification drive for a company that till then was almost entirely dependent on tobacco as its primary business. If ITC today has a shrinking tobacco footprint, that journey was started by Mr. Haksar in 1969. As a leader, he not only looked at the present, but also cast his eyes wide and long into the future to grasp a strategy for ITC that would stand the test of time and maintain its pole position in its respective market segments. His foray into hotels and paperboards was a move that was fully exploited by successive chief executives of ITC to take the company to newer heights. The second point about Mr. Haksar was the initiatives towards diversification, which were also aimed at de-risking ITC's main business of tobacco, and it came at a time when the Indian economy had not tasted the impact of economic reforms and the consequent forces of competition that they generate. Mr. Haksar drove those changes without any external stimulus from the marketplace, like many business leaders have done after facing the heat of competition in post-reforms India, that is 1991. In that sense, Mr. Haksar belonged to that rare generation of business leaders who embraced reforms and the spirit of competition much before they became fashionable or a necessity to survive in the market. There was no pressure on him to embark on a new non-tobacco business, but he did so because he believed in growth, expansion, and the need for anticipating change in the environment before the objective conditions change so dramatically that they force the managements to respond to those challenges not entirely on their own terms. This can be a nightmarish experience for any manager. The dangerous prospects of facing change not on your terms. But Mr. Haksar believed in the maxim of riding the change instead of getting swept away by the forces of change. Indeed, he rode the change and derived many benefits from that for ITC. 3. Mr. Haksar was one of those managers who believed in spending their entire working life in one company. In the current day and age, people movement in companies is frequent, and managers are not ready to appreciate the virtues of growing in the same company and aligning their own goals with that of the company. Perhaps there are more options and choices in today's world, and that makes managers oblivious to the many virtues of loyalty that engenders a new kind of symbiotic growth. But Mr. Haksar belonged to the era of managers who believed in both the long-forgotten virtues. The young age of 23, fresh out of college, Mr. Haksar joined ITC and spent, can you imagine, the next 35 years in the same company, giving shape to the company's growth aspirations in the last 14 years as its chairman. It would be wrong to presume that Mr. Haksar had no options for switching over to a new assignment. But like the Japanese, he stuck to ITC like a loyalist and aligned his growth with that of the company. In the end, Mr. Haksar, ITC, and society in general benefited from this process. The fourth point I would make in support of why Mr. Haksar and his values need to be celebrated today is because he invested a lot in developing and promoting homegrown management talents. Instead of relying on expatriate managers to head the company, Mr. Haksar took pains to develop in-house management talents within ITC so that they could be given new responsibilities and lead the company's growth drive. Of course, his response was perhaps molded by the kind of shareholding pattern that ITC had in those days. But his approach to hunting for homegrown talents to build a new management pool from among Indians must be given due recognition. As a result, ITC for several decades after Mr. Haksar took charge relied on a strong reservoir of management resources within the company and continues to attract talents from other Indian companies and develops them to useful change agents for ITC's benefit. So today, I propose to talk about what kind of an economic environment and challenges that would face young managers of tomorrow, many of whom are here in this batch of students from the Empi Business School. Let me first draw a broad outline of the Indian economy at present and its many challenges. As many of you would know, that India is the fastest growing large economy in the world. Even if we clock around 7.5% economic growth, which seems to be a possibility, India would stay ahead of China. But two caveats must be made here, and I am making this point to this group of budding managers that have already become managers, so to say. And the two caveats, the first caveat is that China expanded its economy with double-digit growth rates or near about that for well over 3 decades. Its per capita GDP or gross domestic product is over $7,000, and it is only now that its growth rate has slowed down a bit, and this is understandable because at that pace you cannot continue to grow in double digits. Compare the Indian economy, and that's my first caveat. We touched double-digit growth rate only one quarter in the past. And we are still struggling to cross the 8% mark in the last couple of years. India's per capita GDP is only $1,800. Compare that to $7,000 from China's. A simple comparison would mean that India has a lot of catching up to do if we want our growth rates to lift all boats so that the goals of poverty, elimination and uplifting the standards of living can be achieved faster. The second caveat to this idea of India is a fastest growing economy is that India cannot rest content with a growth rate of 7 or 8%. If it has to raise its current GDP size of $2 trillion at present to $10 trillion in the next decade and a half, it must keep growing at 10% every year till 2032. Many of you will by then be veteran managers. Going by the past performance of the Indian economy, this looks to be a difficult challenge. So what are we going to do to grow faster? While it is true that India is a huge domestic market to fuel its growth. But the fact is that the global economy is not picking up. Global trade, after many decades, has actually grown at a much slower rate than global growth. This is very unusual. This essentially means that the global marketplace is becoming a more difficult terrain to do business. India's exports are not growing. Indeed, they dropped for the last 18 or 19 months, barring a month's exception. Such a long period of consecutive decline in exports has not been seen in the past. Our trade deficit, of course, is shrink, but that is largely because our imports are falling thanks to a fall in prices of commodities, including petroleum products. The fall in non-oil imports actually is even more worrying. It reflects the lack of revival in the manufacturing sector, the key to sustainable growth. Taken together with the absence of a pickup in investment demand, as reflected in the contraction in the capital goods sector for the last several months, India's industrial or economic revival at a sustained high level continues to remain a question mark, at least in the near future. What is holding up is the buoyancy in services and a pickup in the construction sector. But this alone would not be enough. And the challenge of reviving growth would not be successfully met unless projects are encouraged to invest more in new facilities to address a demand that's waiting to be tapped. A revival in investment demand is also crucially dependent on how the banking sector's ability to lend for viable projects is enhanced. At present, the non-performing assets, or what we call sticky loans, of the banking sector are estimated at well over 7 lakh crore. This menace has to be eliminated. The government is seized of the matter. The problem cannot go away entirely. Thus, till the banking sector is freed of its NPA burdens, investment demand is revived, and economic growth picks up a decent momentum, India's march from its current status as a low middle income country to a higher middle income country would not be a reality. That challenge is a macroeconomic challenge, and the government, along with its policymakers and economic advisors, will hopefully tackle the spur the economy to higher growth. What should the managers of tomorrow be mindful of then? In the context of what I just said, I would present 6 factors that tomorrow's managers, which is the group is sitting here right now, must be conscious of while charting their own growth path to align with the growth of the country, as Mr. Haksar did so well in great style. My first submission here is that tomorrow's managers must recognize that jobless growth is a reality. India has the unenviable task of providing 12 million new jobs every year. But technology and competitive pressure of improving productivity have made this task a formidable challenge. Remember that this was a political opportunity that the Bharatiya Janata Party and Mr. Narendra Modi, our dear Prime Minister, were very keen to exploit in the run-up to the 2014 general elections. Indeed, one of Mr. Modi's successful election campaign slogans centered around providing jobs to the millions of unemployed youth. It was a campaign that certainly worked, and it arguably helped the BJP win the general elections 2 years ago. Today, if you look back, the job situation has made no significant recovery. Not that investments have completely slowed, but the conventional ratio of the number of jobs that created for every unit of investment has changed, and this change has gone against the job seekers. As I said, both technology and competitive pressures on cost management and improved productivity have led to multitasking and reduced job creation. This is not true of just the industrial sector alone, but equally apt for the services sector. In my own profession, journalism, jobs that till recently were performed by 4 different kinds of employees at different levels are now performed by one person. All this is happening because of technology. There are obvious gains here. There are productivity gains, and also the quality of jobs performed has seen a distinct improvement. But as a corollary, jobs are not growing at the same pace as they were in the past. The data on jobs in various sectors of the economy in the last 2 years and anecdotal evidence bear this out. So even if investment revival takes place, the banking sector mess is cleaned up and the economy is growing at a healthy rate, the expectations of jobs growing at the earlier pace would be misplaced. So the managers of tomorrow must be conscious of this and devise ways to tackle what I would consider a tricky problem. There will be a need to readjust manpower planning and its management. There will be need for training, retraining, and redeployment of existing manpower to get bang for your buck, and more importantly, to avoid a potentially explosive labor relations crisis. Now that is no manager would like. In short, managers of tomorrow must start preparing from today and now. The second area that would require attention from managers is skilling. Conventional wisdom has it that China is vacating many low-skilled manufacturing areas and India can exploit this for its own benefit. As explained earlier, this will be a mistaken belief. So don't rely on this idea of low-cost, low-skilled manufacturing opportunities will come India's way. Whatever low-skilled jobs are being vacated by China will be replaced by a mix of automated and skill-based jobs. So the spurt in jobs will be the skilled category. The good news is that the government is conscious of the need for an accelerated program for skilling existing manpower, as also for creating a network of infrastructure for producing skilled manpower. There has been a rapid rise in the level of industrial skills that are needed, and our current infrastructure is in the dire need of an upgrade. When the government has been pushing for the upgrade, there is a strange and inexplicable lack of adequate response to this challenge of the private sector. A few companies have taken up the task of creating a mutually rewarding apprenticeship program in collaboration with Indian institutions, but this movement has to gain greater momentum and grow deeper roots. To be sure, the government has taken some initiatives to create a more conducive environment where industry and academic institutions, primarily such as like yours, can work together to improve the skills level of industrial or even managerial manpower. But there is still some distance we need to travel because the entire corporate sector is completely committed to the idea of skilling, reskilling and retraining. If the jobs growth challenge has to be met front-end with some success, the focus has to be on skilled jobs. The lower the skills level of a job, the greater the chances of the job becoming automated with the advent of technology and lower costs of the technology. Tomorrow's managers, therefore, must think hard on this aspect. The third area of focus for the leaders of tomorrow will be the small and medium enterprises sector. Gone are the days when growth will become inclusive through a push to the manufacturing sector, large investments, large companies. Today's and tomorrow's manufacturing, as we discussed just a while ago, will be focused on fewer jobs, greater automation and higher levels of skills in the few workers to be employed in such works. So if a gigantic steel plant is to be created, that would only create a few hundred jobs only. But more jobs can be created by the small and medium enterprises sector. This is a major reason why tomorrow's managers must focus on how the country could move towards building a vibrant small and medium enterprises sector, unrestrained and uncontrolled as it is right now by the many regulations that used to earlier choke the growth in these countries. Today, India cannot afford to ignore the importance of this sector for three more specific reasons. The SME is, to my mind, is a vital of the Indian economy right now. There is no denying that small and medium enterprises can be spread far and wide across the country. All you need is physical and communication connectivity. If roads and railways are in good shape, the spread of small and medium enterprises can facilitate wide dispersal of the benefits of growth. With the restrictive policies already consigned to the dustbin of history, the SME sector can be truly transformative. Two, the second factor for the SME sector's defense is the global alliances are now possible, and indeed many requests, as I understand, are coming from developed countries to create tie-ups in the medium and the small sector of industry. Competition, quality and cost efficiency will get a leg up if Indian SMEs can build global alliances. There is a strong demand for such alliances from developed countries, and India and Indian managers must respond to this by developing a strong and vibrant SME sector. The third element in the SME story is that this sector can effectively tap the latent entrepreneurship talents that exist in plenty in small towns and rural villages. Growth can multiply with the entrepreneurs spread across small towns and villages get encouraged to set up small and medium enterprises and are freed from the many controls that still choke their growth. Growth, therefore, could be inclusive in a different but effective way. Our managers of tomorrow must not ignore the challenges and opportunities that the SME sector offers. If India has to start its journey to becoming a global manufacturing hub, which is the dream of every manager and every leader, then that road begins with nurturing of small and medium enterprises. Coming back to my six-point agenda for today's manager and tomorrow's managers, the fourth element is that no manager can now overlook the inherent potential of India's rural and farming sector. It is a goose that will lay golden eggs, not just for politicians who votes, as you all know, but also for our managers. Politicians have already latched on to rural India and farming for reaping political gains. The effect of all this has not always been beneficial for the economy or even for governance. But it's time managers recognize that expanding efficient rural India will mean higher growth, with more equitable distribution of its benefits to a broader section of people that need economic empowerment. It is a win-win situation on agriculture and allied activities to the source of its livelihood. But this sector's contribution to the country's overall gross domestic product is only about 16%, and which has been growing at low single digits for the last several years. What this has meant over the years is the proliferation of the number of marginal and subsistence farmers in India. The pressure on land and its fertility has risen to an unsustainable level. A growing number of agricultural workers cannot meet their basic needs, even as many of them are under pressure to sell their land to industry or trade. But that has resulted, something like seeing what happened in Singapore, in one-off gains and failed to create financial capacity for them. Social unrest has been on the rise in rural India. The managers of tomorrow cannot but respond to this challenge. Over-dependence of people on a small tract of land must end. Agricultural workers must be trained and skilled in new areas to create a source of income other than the land. Productivity gains must be strived for with the help of technology. Simultaneously, farmers must be encouraged to move away from wheat and paddy and move on to more remunerative crops like pulses and oilseeds. Equally important would be to encourage farmers to embrace horticulture, which is a sector where there is scope for higher income to make possible by rising demand. Managers of tomorrow must look at this as an area of opportunity and need not just worry about working in an urban outfit, because the real India is thriving in rural India. The fifth factor which a manager must notice is the growing footprint of technology and infrastructure. No manager can remain oblivious to the dramatic changes technology is bringing about and how the startup space is thriving. The demands on the economy from technology will need to be managed. This will also have other consequences. There will be challenges of tackling the new burst of technology, enabling entrepreneurship, and also the many failures that this would entail. So successes are there, but failures are more difficult to manage. So the challenges will only multiply. The wide infrastructure deficit that exists in India at present too will pose a major challenge. Infrastructure is a key component of your growth. India not only needs huge investments, but also the management bandwidth to implement such investments with effective outcomes. The task of tomorrow's managers is cut out quite clearly. Finally, I would say tomorrow's managers must recognize the difference between growth and productivity growth. India is at that stage of its economy where it must not only grow fast, but it must also improve productivity. Achieving faster growth is certainly a challenge, but a bigger challenge to tackle the disease of low productivity. Technology can help improve productivity up to a level, but sustained enhancement of productivity is possible with the confluence of technology and management skills. It is said that by improving productivity alone, India can bump up its GDP growth pace by 2 percentage points. So my final submission today would be that tomorrow's managers must focus on productivity gains as much as on growth per se. I think I have exceeded the time that was given to me, and I have come to the end, and I want to wish to conclude my thoughts on this note. And I am reasonably certain what I say, that all these factors that I outlined would have, in my hope, received the intellectual assent of Mr. Haksar, in whose memory this lecture has been dedicated. Thank you very much.